can you ask about a company's expectation around workload and overtime without making it seem like you're lazy or don't want to work? Great question. So I've been kind of waiting for someone to ask me that question for a while. So I'm glad you were able to ask me that question. The easiest answer and the best answer is you just ask. You can say, "Can you tell me about the workload here? How's the workload divided up? Or when new work is coming, how is that divided up into the team?" Because it shows that you're interested. It doesn't necessarily show that, "Oh, I don't want to do that much," unless when they tell you that and your facial expression reads, "That's too much for me," or I don't want to do all that. You can ask a question. "Can you tell me about the workload and how the company or the supervisors divide up the workload? When new work comes in, how is that divided up with the team?" That's a great question. That's a great back and forth question to have. Now, the only disadvantage to that question is if you're asking the HR person, he or she may not know the details to that answer. So they may not be able to answer that properly. But if you ask them, because a lot of times in the interview is the HR person and it's also the supervisor or whoever the supervisor of that department is going to be. So usually they will answer that question, because when I get questions like that, I always defer, such and such, you can answer that, because they know how they divide up their workload. But ask that question. That's a good question to ask, because you want to know. These are things that you want to know. So you can ask. It does not, when you ask that question, it does not make it seem like you're lazy or you're trying to get off of work. You're just trying to get an understanding. A good example would be, like when I'm interviewing, they're asking about, what's the caseload? And I give a number. And a lot of times they'd be like, "Oh, well, I used to have 100 people on my caseload last time, so 20 is easy." So a lot of times they're impressed by the number that you were managing before, and what they're going to offer you now is a lot less, which seems like it'd be more manageable. So ask the question, ask it outright. It's a good question. And they should be able to give you an answer. They will not think negative of you when you ask that question. And you don't necessarily have to wait till the end to ask your interview questions. A lot of times, because I'm add on top of that, a lot of times, we wait until our turn when they say, "Okay, do you have any questions for me?" And then you go through your questions. You can ask that. If they're talking about caseloads, they're having a discussion about this is what the workload is, you can ask right then and there. You can say, "Oh, I have a question." And then you ask that question right there. So you don't have to wait till the end of the interview to ask that question. If you've had several jobs and decide to list them all on your resume, how do you best explain the reasons there were so many positions, especially if they were in a short amount of time? So my question would be, why would you want to list all of them on there? You need to list, so let me rephrase. So you need to list the most important jobs that are on there as it relates the last 8 to 10 years. You can list the last 5. So you don't even have to go back 8 or 10 years. You can list the last 5, and that's okay, because remember, we're doing a snapshot, a moment in time. When someone looks at a resume, when an HR representative looked at a resume and sees that the person has had many jobs in a short period of time, all kinds of things go through your head. So you go through, this person can't keep a job or doesn't like to stay in one place for a long period of time. It just runs the gamut. And there's no way to explain it away fully on the resume. You just want to be honest and clear. Put the dates. You can put it at the bottom. If you've had a lot of short-term jobs where you've only been there a short period of time, I would put that at the very bottom. And I would highlight my skills and my education in the top. I would put that at the very bottom, because you want to use your skills to get you the next job, not your employment dates. Now, if you've been on a job for a long period of time and you've been here for 5 years, and then the job before that, maybe you were there 3 years, then that you can put closer to the top. But if you have been in a different job every year, that I would put that at the bottom, and I would only probably list the top 5, the last 5 years, unless they ask you specifically. The thing about job ads, and it's a trick too, and it tests to see if people are paying attention. In the job ad, it may say send me your resume in PDF. If you send it in Word, that's an automatic filter out because you can't follow directions. It may also say, send me a cover letter. Sometimes it'll say, tell me why you want to work here, or tell me why I should hire you. So you want to follow the directions if they have it in the job, in the ad. If the ad doesn't say, I need to see your last 10 years, or I need to see your salary, your salary requests, if they don't ask for things like that, don't put it. So if you've had multiple jobs, if you've had 10 jobs in the last 5 years, I can break the number down. I wouldn't necessarily put all 10. I'd put the top few, only enough skills to be able to show that I have enough experience to work in the job that I'm applying for. How can you politely turn down an offer with the company if you decided for whatever reason you are no longer interested in the position? So it's simple, because you don't owe that company anything, but honesty. So if they make you an offer and you're not interested, not even like you're not interested, like you don't want to negotiate, you thought about it, you went home and you thought about it and you're not interested, then you just send an email back and say, I've had time to think this through, and I've decided this is not the right position for me at this time. Thank you for your considerations. Thank you for the consideration, and I wish you well on finding, a candidate. And leave it at that. There's nothing else you can do. Now, with that being said, too, like later, if you be like, oh, maybe I'll try my luck again then, your luck, that ship will have sailed. So if they make the offer and you decline, you won't be able to circle back around and say, oh, well, I'll try it, now I'm ready 3 months later or 6 months later. But you can't. It is okay. It's okay to say, thank you for this offer. I do appreciate it. But I've decided that this is not the right position for me at this time. And thank you again for your consideration. Keep it polite. Keep it professional. Keep it short. No one needs you don't need an explanation. Because honestly, who cares? Because if you don't accept the position, then I don't care why you didn't. I offer you the position. You had time to think about it. I don't need my husband and I, we're moving to that. I don't care. If you decline, then you just say those things. Thank you. I've decided not to take the position, and you move on. Okay? Because you don't owe a company that you don't work for anything. You don't owe them anything.